At 24, you're finally allowed into the real meetings. Not the family briefings, not the summaries prepared for you afterward. The actual room, Zurich. Dark wood, high windows, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. It's managed. 14 people sit around a table longer than your apartment's living room. You're given a seat near the end, not the head. Not yet. Nobody explains the shipping insurance subsidiary on the agenda to you beforehand. Nobody has to. You're expected to already know it, and because you've spent 2 years reading every document that crossed this family's desk, preparing silently for a seat nobody promised you'd get. You don't just follow the numbers, you follow the rhythm of the room. Who speaks first? Who waits? Who says nothing for 40 minutes? And then says 4 sentences that end the entire discussion. That's your great-uncle Julian. 4 sentences, 40 minutes of silence beforehand. Nobody interrupts him. Not once, not even to agree. Afterward in the car, you ask your father why Julian barely speaks in these meetings. He says, because everyone already knows what he thinks. He only speaks when the room needs correcting. You file that sentence away. You won't fully understand it for another 4 years. There's a colleague from business school, Marcus, whose father owns 4 car dealerships. Marcus talks about it constantly, proudly, like it's the biggest number anyone in the room has ever heard. You never once mentioned that your family's holding structure spans 11 countries and 41 operating entities. You learned early, nobody taught you this directly, you just absorbed it, that saying the real number out loud makes rooms go strange. People either flinch or start performing for you. So you say nothing. By 24, you already understand something most people never will. The size of what you have isn't something you show. It's something you carry quietly, the way you'd carry something fragile through a crowd. At 25, you're given your first real assignment with your name actually attached to the outcome, not a training exercise, a live decision. Your father hands you a file on a family-owned vineyard estate in the Rhone Valley. That's been losing value for 6 straight years. He says, tell me why. You have 3 weeks. You fly out yourself this time. You walk the vineyard. You read every harvest report going back 15 years. You interview the estate manager 3 separate times in person, refining your questions each round, watching his face as closely as his answers. You conclude the decline is due to shifting climate patterns affecting grape yield. You're wrong. Your father reads your report at a family dinner, in front of your 2 younger cousins who are watching you closely the way you once watched people older than you, and says only, you found the weather. You missed the manager. It turns out the estate manager, the same man you'd interviewed 3 times, looked in the eye across his own kitchen table, had been quietly underreporting yields for 9 years, selling the difference off the books to a distributor in Lyon. You feel your face go hot, sitting there as a grown man being corrected like an intern. Nobody comforts you. Nobody says, good effort, you're new to this. Your father simply slides a second folder across the table, the real forensic accounting report, already completed by someone else, weeks before you'd even started, and says, read this. Then tell me what your report was missing. You read it 11 times that night, alone in your own apartment, still in your travel clothes. It is, you'll realize years later, the most valuable lesson anyone ever gave you. Not because your father was cruel, because he never once softened the truth to protect your ego. The same ego a room full of investors will one day expect you to have earned the right to. In this family, being wrong isn't punished. Being wrong and not learning from it precisely, that's the only real failure. Your cousins watching from across the table learn the lesson too, without a word being said to them directly. At 28, you stop being handed practice problems entirely. You're brought in to lead a negotiation. A family investment into a deep-water port expansion in West Africa, $42 million, structured through a holding company 3 layers removed from your own name. You sit near the front of the room in Geneva this time. Your name is on the briefing materials. The other side of the table knows exactly who you are before you sit down. The lead negotiator for the opposing consortium is a man named Halverson. Mid-50s, sharp, clearly used to being the most prepared person in any room he enters. For 90 minutes, the conversation circles a single unresolved issue, a maritime regulatory framework that hasn't been finalized by the regional government yet. Everyone's pretending to negotiate terms. What they're actually negotiating is risk on an unwritten rule. You realize, mid-conversation, watching Halverson choose his words with unusual care. That your family isn't betting on the port itself. You're betting on a 30-year relationship your great-grandfather started with a shipping ministry that no longer exists in its original form, but whose successor officials still take your family's calls first. The port is the excuse. The relationship is the asset. You steer the entire negotiation around that single realization and close the deal 2 points better than your father's own projections. On the flight home, he sits beside you without a phone in his hand, a rare thing these days. He asks exactly one question. What did you actually win in there? You tell him. The relationship was the real investment, not the port, and you negotiated accordingly. He's quiet long enough that, for a moment, you wonder if you've misjudged something. Then he says, "That's the whole business. Everyone else is trading assets. We're trading proximity." You finally negotiated like you understood that. You sit with that sentence for the rest of the flight. It's the closest thing to real praise you've ever heard him give anyone. At 30, you're sent, alone, to evaluate a distressed logistics company in Southeast Asia the family is considering acquiring. 6 weeks. No senior advisor beside you. No instructions on what success looks like. You spend the first 10 days just getting warehouse managers to speak to you honestly, which is its own kind of work, because they've dealt with acquisition teams before. Teams that show up in suits, ask surface questions, and leave. By week 3, one manager, a woman named Rati, who's run the same regional depot for 22 years, starts telling you things she never told the previous evaluators. Not because she trusts you more as a person, because your questions by week 3 are specific enough that vague answers would take more effort than honest ones. In week 4, buried in a receivables report that technically balances on paper, you find it. The company's largest client, 31% of total revenue, hasn't sent a complete payment in 13 months. They've been making partial payments, just often enough to keep the account classified as current, which is technically true and structurally a lie. You flag it. The deal is repriced. The family saves nearly $31 million on the acquisition. Your father mentions it once in passing during an unrelated phone call 2 weeks later. Good catch in Jakarta. That's it. That's the entire acknowledgement. From a man who once made you sit through an entire dinner over a missed vineyard fraud. You've learned by now not to expect more. In this family, praise isn't withheld to be cruel. It's withheld because the work is simply expected to be done correctly. The same way nobody praises a grown man for showing up on time. Your cousin Adrian left at 29, moved to Nairobi, took a job with an agricultural nonprofit, earning less in a year than your family spends on a single dinner, honoring a business partner's retirement. She told everyone, quietly but clearly, that she was done being part of the machine, as she called it. Nobody argued with her. Nobody tried to stop her. The family, if anything, seemed almost curious to watch what would happen. She lasted 19 months, not because the work broke her, and not because she failed at it. By every account, she was good at it, respected by the people she worked alongside. She came back because she told you once over dinner, after too much wine, "I kept doing the math on how much good I could do with the resources sitting in a trust I said I'd never touch. And eventually the math won." You don't judge her for it. You understand, better than almost anyone she could tell this to, that the family doesn't need anyone to want to stay. It only needs you not to be the one who breaks the chain. Adrienne came back. She sits on a foundation board now, redirecting family capital toward the exact causes she once tried to walk away from, funding them at a scale the nonprofit she left could never have imagined. She never talks about the 19 months. You've noticed, though, that she's the only person in the family who still asks you every time she sees you, "Are you doing this because you want to? Or because you don't know how to stop?" You've never fully answered her. At 38, during a quarterly review in London, you look at a consolidated summary spanning 6 continents, 19 sectors, and 93 entities. Total growth for the year, 4.2%. 4.2% doesn't sound like much. Applied to a base number like yours, it's more capital generated in 12 months than most investment funds will ever raise across their entire existence. You think about this on a flight later that week, sitting beside a man roughly your own age who's building a pitch deck for a seed-stage biotech company on his laptop. You get talking. He tells you with genuine excitement that if the round closes, it'll be the biggest deal of his career. You don't tell him what your family closed that same week, not because you're hiding it, because there's no way to say it that doesn't instantly change the conversation, make him perform admiration or awkwardness or both. His deal, if it works, changes his entire life. Your decisions this quarter adjust a trajectory that was already moving before you were born, and will keep moving after you're gone. The stakes were never the same size. Neither is the pressure, because when you make a mistake, nobody fires you, no board votes you out, there's no dramatic consequence at all. There's just a narrowing, a door somewhere 15 years down the line that quietly stops being available. In a way you may never be able to trace back to the moment you made the error. That kind of invisible cost is its own particular weight. You can't really explain this at a dinner party. Say it one way, it sounds like bragging. Say it another way, it sounds like self-pity from someone who has, by any reasonable measure, everything. There's no version of the sentence that lands the way it actually feels. So, mostly, you don't say it at all. Here's the part of the story most people never consider: watching from outside. You didn't build the empire. You inherited the obligation to not be the one who loses it. The houses, the boards, the influence, the quiet way rooms change temperature when your name is mentioned. Those aren't the achievement. They're the visible surface of a much older machine. One built specifically to convert capital into continuity, across a timeline longer than any single life inside it. You are one link in that timeline. When your link ends, the chain continues without pausing to notice. Somewhere right now, someone is starting with genuinely nothing. An idea they can't stop thinking about. A bank balance you'd consider a rounding error. They believe that if they work long enough, precisely enough, they can build something that's entirely, unambiguously theirs. They're right. And that total ownership, earned completely from zero, is the one thing your name will never actually give you. You understood that a long time ago. You stopped asking whether it's a loss. You just do the work. And the machine, as it always has for 300 years, quietly continues. If this story made you think differently about what wealth actually costs, hit subscribe. Because next time, we step into a completely different kind of inheritance and a completely different kind of weight.